concerned about what's happened in Israel. They're kind of out there by themselves right now. What do you anticipate happening when Benjamin takes out there? What would you say to them as president?
Well, Netanyahu is an old friend, and what I would say is that we would like to have a genuine peace process. A genuine peace process means you can't have 11 missiles fired into Israel as happened in November alone. A real peace process means the Palestinian schools can't teach terrorism. They can't have textbooks that say, if there are 13 Jews and 9 Jews are killed, how many Jews are left? Which are in the textbooks, which we indirectly pay for. And so I would start by saying, I would really like to have a commitment from the Palestinian leadership that they will recognize Israel's right to exist, that they will cease encouraging terrorism, that they will cut off and hunt down people who are determined to wage war, and then we can have a genuine peace conversation. But if they're not willing to do that, I would frankly cut off all aid to them and tell them we're not going to subsidize war, and we're not going to subsidize terrorism, and we're not going to ask Israel to do anything as long as you're firing missiles at them. Now, I think we have. Can you imagine, given the American attitude, if somebody was firing 11 missiles a month into the United States, how many Americans would say, well, you know what we really have here is a need to sit down and talk. And how many Americans would be saying, okay, when are we running over? I mean, when they hit New York City, we sent troops all the way to Afghanistan. There's some imbalance here of desire to protect ourselves. But in the long run, and this is what nobody's been able to articulate, in the long run, you want to say to the Palestinian people, we want you to have self-government with the rule of law, not dictatorship. We want you to live in peace without terrorism. We want you to be prosperous. We'd like to find a way for Israeli entrepreneurs and Palestinians to come together to create thousands of new jobs to raise the standard of living of the whole region. So we ought to have the same attitude towards Latin America. We want everybody in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, and elsewhere to have freedom and self-government and the rule of law and the chance to be middle class and to be property owners. And I think all too often our system doesn't reach out to human beings the way it should. So I'm not anti-Palestinian, but I'm not prepared to have myths imposed on us. And candidly, the right to return is impossible. And somebody has to have the courage to say, you want to negotiate a peace, I'm for negotiating a peace. Don't set a standard that's impossible and then pretend you want peace. And so I think honest, straightforward talk might actually get us closer to real peace than we're going to get from all the phony diplomacy of the last 20 years.
Speaker.
Yeah, a couple more, way in the back.
As they try to paint you with a wide brush as being maybe, they're saying you're going to be a divider. I tend to look back at the 80s and 90s and see that things got done at that time while we were in Congress. Can you explain maybe to this crowd how in passing pro-law, how you could pass welfare reform and get all these other things done with that Congress or with that, that president?
I'm laughing because you're right. Some of my friends have all these goofy attacks that say, Gingrich can't work with the other side. Well, four balanced budgets with Bill Clinton. Welfare reform, the Democrats split on welfare reform 101 to 101. We got half of them. When I worked with Reagan, Tip O'Neill was Speaker. I mean, if you couldn't get Democratic votes, you weren't going to get anything through the House. So we had to get 1/3 of the Democrats to vote for the tax cut. It took heavy lifting. It took going back to their districts. It took really clear arguments where people couldn't hide. But we did it over and over again. That's why I think some of these ads are just goofy, because the truth is, you look at my record, and I've consistently been able to work with Democrats without giving in. So people say, well, and I know there are a couple of ads that say, Gingrich isn't a consistent conservative. Now, I don't want to get into any attacks, so I'm not going to comment on the people who are suggesting I'm not a consistent conservative, although one wonders how they would know one if they saw it. But if you look at my record, helping Ronald Reagan in 79-80, helping Reagan from 80 to 88, opposing the Reagan tax increase. People forget this. When Reagan was talked into raising taxes in 82, I was one of the guys who fought it. When Bush was talked into raising taxes in 90, I was one of the guys who fought it. I've been actually pretty darn consistent about this stuff. My career record in the American Conservative Union is 90%. Now, it may not be perfect, but it's reasonably conservative. You know, my right to life position was 98.6, and the one we disagreed on had nothing to do with abortion. They decided welfare reform was dangerous, and they opposed it. But they will concede to you 98.6% is a reasonably good lifetime record. So, but the trick is, you've got to, and frankly, with the current president, it's almost hopeless because he has no idea how to do this. I mean, Clinton had been governor 12 years. He had negotiated with the state legislature. He understood how to do it, and he was a moderate in many ways. He had tried to found the Democratic Leadership Council. Obama is essentially a Saul Alinsky radical who has never actually served in government. He was hanging out in the state Senate while he ran for the U.S. Senate, and then he was hanging out in the U.S. Senate while he ran for president. But he's actually spent remarkably few days actually trying to govern. And the result is he doesn't have any of the skills. I mean, the first skill is you get to know each other. I mean, Clinton and I spent 35 days face-to-face negotiating. And you got to find out what do you need and what can't you do. And I'll tell you what I need and what I can't do. Now, can we get something done together? And I'll close this example. The only two discretionary domestic spending cuts since World War II were 81 when I was a junior member and voted for it, and 95 when I was speaker. Those are the only two times we've actually not slowed the rate of increase, actual cuts. Both of them you had to have Democratic votes to get it done. So you can be principled and cooperate and be effective. Yes?